tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Thank you so much for being here. Heather, please introduce yourself a little bit to everyone, and then we'll get into your story.
Yeah, so my name's Heather Baker. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm also a makeup artist. I've been married for 12 years now, almost 13. Three kiddos, one in heaven and two here on this earth. And yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
So let's start at the beginning. Um,
yeah.
did you always know you wanted to have kids, or was it something that you sort of moved towards?
So I actually didn't think I wanted to have kids. Me and my husband actually were both on the same page of just not sure. And it wasn't until I have an identical twin sister and she started having kids, and I was like, okay, that looks kind of fun. I think I can do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had an identical twin.
Yes, we are identical. So you would see her in public and be like, "Hey, Heather," and it is not me.
I'm sure you have a different style though, because there's always
Yes.
some kind of different thing going on. I know
Yes.
I had friends who were twins and they purposefully did things differently,
Mhm.
but they both still liked a lot of the same things. So they
Yes.
they found it
Yeah.
frustrating.
Totally.
So it was her having kids. And then how did things progress from sort of your seeing your sister with kids and then you guys actually starting
Yeah.
to try?
Yeah, so she had her first one and I was like, that looks like fun. I think we could do that. And we probably started to try about a year later. And it was so funny because I got off birth control and I like freaked out and I was like, I just don't know. And it took us quite a while to get pregnant. And we, I kind of just didn't even think about, like, I thought, oh, you go off birth control and you get pregnant. And that's just how it works. And that's how it worked for my twin sister and a lot of my friends. And that just wasn't our story. We struggled with infertility. And we never got answers as to why my body couldn't do what most women's bodies just naturally could. And so I ended up getting pregnant and shortly lost that baby. I lost my first one at about 6 weeks. And it was completely devastating. Like, I knew miscarriages were normal and like common, I guess would be a better word to say, but until you really go through it, like, you just don't know what that's like.
Mm.
But we knew we wanted to have a family, so we continued to try. And I guess to kind of go back to, I actually have four in heaven and two on earth. I had three full-term pregnancies and three miscarriages. And so yeah, we lost that first baby at 6 weeks. The doctors were like, that can happen. It's totally normal. We went on to try to get pregnant and we're doing fertility treatments and my body wasn't responding. And I found out that I was pregnant with twin girls, which I was so excited because I am a twin. And shortly after realized that we had lost one of the twins kind of towards the end of the first trimester. And that was incredibly hard, but we started to learn this lesson of like grief and joy can coexist because we had lost one, but we were hopeful for the one that we still had and who I was pregnant with. And so that started us down the journey of I ended up having a healthy baby girl at 39 weeks. And her name is Emmeline, and she just healed our hearts in so many ways. And we were missing our two babies in heaven at that point, but grateful for her. And yeah, and then after she turned one, we got pregnant unexpectedly, like just totally unexpected, no fertility, nothing. And we were like, whoa, this is weird. This doesn't happen for us. And we ended up losing a baby boy to trisomy 15 at the end of our first trimester. And so I think just finding ourselves for the third time in the doctor's office, hearing those words, like, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat, was just incredibly hard. And, we weren't trying. And so it just felt cruel. And so I ended up having a D&C and finding out that he was a boy and that, he had trisomy 15. And so, yeah, and then we just knew we wanted to continue our family and wanted to grow our family. And so we tried to get pregnant again, couldn't get pregnant, and ended up at a fertility clinic. And we were on our last round of IUIs when we were, it was kind of like our Hail Mary, like this is it. And we got pregnant on Mother's Day of 2018 and went on to have a pretty healthy pregnancy. Nothing outside of the norm. I had a ton of doctor's appointments because of, just our past and our past losses. And I was about 2 days away from my due date, and I wasn't really feeling baby move. I felt like something was wrong. And I went into the doctor, and, I had no idea walking through those doors that my life would never be the same when I would walk out. And we had found out that our daughter had passed, and it was incredibly hard. And we had to start to walk down this road of, instead of planning her arrival, we were planning her funeral and trying to wrap our head around, giving birth and knowing that our baby wouldn't come out crying. And even harder, like having to tell her very excited older sister that, she was going to be with Jesus and she wasn't going to be home with us. And it was just a lot. And her name is Blakely Grace, and she was born on January 8th of 2019. 6 pounds, 2 ounces, full head of dark curly hair. She was completely healthy. So to this day, we have no idea, what happened. And I guess 40% of stillbirth in America goes undiagnosed or whatever, without reason. And so it was incredibly hard. So our journey to becoming parents has been one marked with a lot of loss, a lot of pain, but a lot of joy as well. We did get pregnant after her, which we weren't trying. We didn't do any sort of fertility or anything. And so it was quite a surprise. And I had a son in 2020. He's now 2.5 and healthy and doing great. When he was born, he almost passed away too. So it was a little bit of trauma on top of trauma. And yeah, so we've just had to really fight for the kids that we have on this earth. But all of my babies, the 4 in heaven and the 2 on this earth, have really made me who I am and helped me find my strength and my, just connect more with who I am, and have made me a better person, a better wife, a better mom, all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. How you said your lost son, you almost lost him. I mean, what happened? Like, did he?
Yeah. So because I didn't get answers with my daughter, I lived at the doctor's office, which was fine with me because, I was so nervous. And so I was going in 3 times a week from 30 weeks on. And at 35 weeks, I just felt like something was off. And I wasn't supposed to go in that day, but I just said, hey, I'd like to come in. I don't feel like something's off. And so, like, if I could tell moms anything, it's listen to those intuitions. We have them. Sometimes we feel like we're crazy, but, I just remember being like, I think I want to go in today. And so I went in, and they would put me on, I always did stress tests. And they put me on the stress test monitor, and he didn't look good. And he failed what they call a biophysical profile. And so they were like, we have to induce you. He was about 35 weeks. And so they induced me. And when he was born, he kind of just was in shock. And so in my mind, I dreamt of this beautiful redemptive story where my baby comes out screaming because, Blakely didn't do that. It was so quiet. And so I thought, oh, this will be so healing and redemptive to like walk through this process. And for whatever reason, that's just not how my body doesn't like to be pregnant. Delivery is hard. And he came out and he was very blue and wasn't crying. And they took him right away and had to resuscitate him. And I remember being like, not again. Like, how could this be happening again? And who are these women that pop out these healthy babies? Like, I wanted the Pampers commercial where they just put them on your chest and it's a beautiful moment. And I just didn't get that. And looking back, that's okay. My son is here today and I'm grateful for that. Whatever was going on within my body, he was under stress. And so they took him out and he, you know, he's healthy now. He had a rough go. He stayed in the NICU for a little bit, but he's here now. And that's, you know, all that matters.
I'm guessing they didn't have any answers for you with that either. Dang
Mm-mm.
it. That sucks.
I know.
That
So I was
sucks.
like, I'm done having kids.
No, well, it sounds
They,
like, you know, it could have been sort of a similar scenario, you know, with your last two
Mhm.
pregnancies there, like because, you know, she didn't make it
Mhm.
out, but he did, and it was only because you were like, no,
Mhm.
something's not right. Like, can we sort this?
And yeah, and they told me, had you waited through the weekend, he may not be here. And I was like, what in the world? Like, and so there was this thought in my mind of like, why can't my body just do what most women do naturally, you know? And I had to make peace with my body and realize like, yes, it had failed me at times. Yes, it had come through at times. And I had to learn how to like love my body and see it's not broken. It's not, you know, I didn't cause my babies to go through all of this. Like it's just, it's so weird. And it's weird to me with all the technology we have that more can't be done, but that's, yeah,
I had that
how it
conversation
is.
with the lady this morning. She was like, you know, we're supposed to be technologically advanced. Like, why is
Mhm.
this still happening?
Yeah. How can you not see the cord and that it's wrapped around my baby's neck? Or, you know, I have those conversations with moms all the time because now I work with a nonprofit that helps mamas that go through loss. And yeah, how do we not, how is there nothing invented or how can you not see those things?
It does. It drives you crazy. Um, especially when you go through the loss yourself and you don't get the answers that you crave, that you want. I'm
Yeah.
glad you got answers for your second loss with the trisomy. Is that like it's just I know it's horrible, but at the same time there's like a relief of when you find something like that you get some kind of answer. But
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm sorry you didn't get any answers
Right.
with the last two. That sucks. Um,
Yeah.
with your first
Yeah.
loss, how did that play out? Because you said she was
Yeah.
6 weeks. The baby was 6 weeks. You know,
Mhm.
how did that go?
Yeah. So it was my first pregnancy, you know, I found out at like 3 weeks. So early. So I felt like I had known for a long time when most women sometimes they don't find out till 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I had known, I mean, like literally the minute you can find out you're pregnant, I think I found out, which was hard. With that pregnancy, I started bleeding and I ended up in so much pain. I had to go to the emergency room. I was bleeding so much. And so I knew like something isn't right and went into the emergency room. They thought I was having an ectopic pregnancy, so they wouldn't let me drink anything or eat anything. And I thought I was dying. Like I literally thought I was dying. I was in so much pain. And I ended up passing everything in the hospital, which was incredibly hard, and didn't have any living children at home. And it was just hard because like people just treat it like it's something that happens all the time. And so they were like, oh, that's a bummer. And I'm like, yes, like it was at 6 weeks and that was early. But for me, that was at the time, that was my 10. I had no idea, like 4 years later, I would add on, 32 weeks and lose a baby then. But at the time, and this is what I tell people a lot is loss, whether 6 weeks, 32 weeks, like it is different, but it is, you wanted that child, you prayed for that child, you tried, and so it was really hard. So I ended up not having to do any kind of surgeries or anything with that particular baby. And I don't know, what the cause was of that one. It was pretty early, but it felt very traumatic.
Yeah. Yeah. How was the hospital? Because I mean, you would have heard many stories of hospitals and medical staff. So did you have a good time, or was it just really?
Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot because I think I was just in like what is happening, but they were pretty great and very sensitive. And I mean, gosh, this was back in 2014. And so yeah, I feel like I don't remember anything crazy that anyone said or did. They didn't make me feel like, oh, it just is what it is.
Yeah,
But yeah, I feel like they were pretty sensitive.
that sounds good. Yeah, the stories you hear, and I've had a couple of really, really positive ones, and I was just like, that's so amazing, and
Mhm.
gosh, the
Mhm.
hospital staff. But yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, sometimes you don't always get that. And with Blakely, we decided to have an autopsy because we wanted answers. We were like, if we're going to continue to have a family and to continue to grow our family, we weren't sure at that point, but like we just wanted to know, especially given our 3 miscarriages, like, is something going on? Is there something genetically wrong with my husband and I? And so we chose to do an autopsy because we wanted answers. We thought maybe that would make it better. And it was very traumatic because the autopsy place, they wouldn't get back to us. And we were like waiting, waiting, waiting. And so like we kept calling them and they would be kind of ignoring us. And when they finally got back to us, it turned out that it's a teaching facility, and one of the residents that was in charge of everything ended up throwing away the fresh tissue. I know. Yeah. Very traumatic. Is exactly how they told us. I'm sorry, one of our residents either threw away or lost the tissue we needed to do the chromosome analysis or something. And as a grieving mom, like not even 3 months postpartum, obviously that didn't sit well with me. And it was like traumatizing on a whole new level. And I was like, what do you mean that they threw away or lost? And so there was a lot of trauma with that. And so I think you're right. Some of the medical professionals can kind of treat you like it's just no big deal. And then we had amazing ones that cried with us and, really grieved with us. And then we had ones that we were like so traumatized by.
I find that, just from talking to so many women, that when they're so just blasé about it, when they just say things just nonchalant, like not even like there's no emotion there, that's when everyone has the hardest time. Like we have the hardest time because it's like you're not even talking to a human being anymore, and they look at you as a number rather than a human, and then you're diminished, and you're already feeling diminished anyway. Whereas when someone's crying with you, or when someone's like feel like you can see it in their face, and that emotion, you know, you're like, I'm a human, and what I'm feeling is relevant and it's valid. And I think that's just, it's just such a shame, because you need that validation, and having a medical professional validate you actually goes a really long way to healing. Because like I said, I've heard of some great cases. I mean, you said your first one, and in those moments there isn't there's a sense of healing, because then you don't add another layer of trauma, because no one's done that to you again.
Yeah, and I I agree. And I think one of the coolest things for me that has come out of all of this is I now get to kind of talk with medical professionals about what was helpful in our story, what wasn't helpful. And one of the pieces I always share is the midwife who delivered my daughter Blakely, who was stillborn. I remember when she was stitching me up, she was crying and the nurses had to wipe her eyes so she could remain sterile. And it was beautiful. And I always tell nurses now, like, you are truly like angels without wings. Like, our nurses made a huge difference in our journey to start healing, because they were real people. They weren't afraid to cry with us. They weren't afraid, And I think as a grieving mom, someone who's willing to just sit in the discomfort and cry with you is one of the best gifts, instead of, it is uncomfortable and most people don't know what to do. But when you can lean in and cry and sit in that and know that there's no words that are going to make it better, there's nothing that's going to make it better besides your presence and just your willingness to be uncomfortable, that's a gift.
Yeah. And I think, it can often be traumatic for the healthcare professionals as well, So, if you're a healthcare professional and you feel like crying, you actually should feel the emotion, because you don't know if that's going to actually help the other person or not. And it is emotional, helping someone deliver a baby that's not moving. That is traumatic and horrible and sad, and it's okay to cry over someone else's baby, and that you feel their pain. That's okay, especially if you're used to delivering living babies. So
yeah, totally. One of the coolest things that one of the nurses told me when we were talking is, she was like, some of them have different ways they remember. One of them does an ornament every year for every baby that she delivered that, had passed or was born still. Another one planted trees or plants. And that was really sweet to me as a mom, because I think, I'm just another person coming through. And they're like, no, we remember those babies. That's a sacred space. And that was really sweet, because it's trauma for them. And I remember we had nurses who fought to take care of us when we were delivering Blakely. And I was like, that meant so much, because I'm like, you could go be delivering someone on one of the happiest days and you're choosing to be with me. And that was so sweet. It was really sweet.
That is really sweet. Actually, I had one of the ladies I was speaking to, she said that her midwife was like, no, I'm taking care of this couple. And that, it is really beautiful when someone's like, no, I have to be here. Yeah. I'm going to be here.
Totally.
And it is, it is a lot. It's a lot that we have to go through, but then it's a lot that we're needing others to go through with us. We can't necessarily do it on our own. But yeah, it's quite bizarre, isn't it? How people get drawn in. But I do look to sort of faith and God, and I'm like, he's placed those people there, and maybe they needed to see this, and maybe this needed to happen in this way. And I just I try and make it more reasonable in my mind.
Yeah, you have to. It's so heavy and so dark. That was the only thing that kept me going. And that's the only thing that can keep me not falling apart. And I've had my days of not wanting this story. I just want my daughter and all my babies, but then I have my days of really being able to see how she has changed me and made me strong, and the passion that she has instilled in me to help other moms and families. My husband started a nonprofit for dads of loss. Our whole lives have changed because of them. And so, our living kids and kids in heaven, they've just shaped us to be who we are. And as much as I want her here, the reality we wake up in every day is that she's not. And so what do we do with that? And, we just made a promise at her funeral that we would be the voice that she was never given on this earth, and that we would use our story to help others. And that's our way of keeping her memory alive, because as lost moms, our biggest fear is that the rest of the world is going to forget them. And they were real. She was 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Her picture is behind me. She was a real human being. And, even though I always say, even though she lost her life, she helped me find mine. And that is the most beautiful thing. And I'm forever grateful.
So with Blake, did you say, or Blakely?
Blakely.
You got to hold him?
Yeah, so I found out on January 7th that she had died. It was probably almost 5 o'clock in the evening. And I went in and I got induced that evening, probably around 10 p.m. And she was born she was born at 10:52 the next night, so pretty much 24 hours later. And we got 7 sacred, beautifully hard hours with her of just studying her little features. We introduced her to our families, prayed over her, read Bible verses, just she got to sleep next to me because I was exhausted. It was like 2 a.m. We had an amazing nonprofit who came in and did keepsakes and things like that and encouraged us. And we said goodbye to her at like 6 a.m. And those are just hours that I'll always cherish. And it'll never be enough time, no matter what. I think as lost moms, there's never enough time. And I think one of the hardest things I've had to do is hand over my baby to a nurse and watch her walk out of the room and know I'd never see her again on this side of heaven. And that's incredibly hard. And I don't know how someone could get through that without having faith, or who could, just see, she's in heaven. And there are days where that gives me so much comfort, and there are days when that doesn't give me comfort. And I think God can handle both of those times. But it's crazy how, when I think back to some of those times of how did we get through that, to me, I can only think of my faith and knowing that like there was just that unexplainable peace and strength that I have to believe in something bigger than myself.
Yeah. With your second loss, did you get to hold that baby? Like, because you said you were through the first trimester, so I'm guessing, normally they look like at that point.
So my first loss obviously was 6 weeks. I passed everything in the hospital, didn't even, second loss was my daughter, who now, she's almost 7. It was her identical twin.
Third loss, I meant. Yeah.
My third loss, I did not. I had a D&C and I was put under. So I never got to see him or hold him or anything. And I was right around 12 weeks, so still early. That wasn't even offered. And then obviously Blakely, like almost full term, got to meet her and spend as much time with her.
Yeah, I guess it's it depends on the way in which they take the baby out, because I know with the D&C procedure, it's not necessarily in a holistic way. So then, you wouldn't really be able to hold the baby. So that's probably just the scenario, unfortunately. But I know some women, had like, it was like a D&C. I don't think they actually had D&Cs. I think it was a case of they had something that then like made labor happen or something, so then they could hold the baby, or they started labor naturally, something like that. I think it's so difficult because you don't know all the options. They don't tell you all the different things that can be done, and a lot of the time we just get those 3 options of natural, pill, or D&C. And sometimes they don't even give you that, because they're like, well, it's been too long and we don't know about infections and things like that. So how did that sort of play out for you? I mean, you said you got the D&C, so you were under and you didn't see anything, but what were the options that they gave you? Did they give you all 3, or did they just say, nah, we got to sort this out?
No. So it's interesting because of my body just went into like basically labor, just because I was in so much pain, and I was like, what is this pain? And they're like, that's your body going through labor. Even though I was so early, that's what I was feeling. I just didn't know it. That was my first. My second, obviously, with twins, typically the baby reabsorbs during the other pregnancy, because I was in my first trimester. When I had my daughter, after 6 weeks, I was still bleeding, and I was like, this doesn't seem right. And so I went back in, and they saw that I had retained placenta. So I had to go in, have a D&C to remove that. When they went in to remove it, it was attached. And so I started bleeding pretty heavily. And I think they just kind of like got out of there. And 10 days later, I was still bleeding. And so they still saw like something going, like something was still in there. And it ended up being products of conception of the twin. And so I had to go in and have another procedure done and have that tissue removed, which was just, not fun. And then with my third loss, I went in and they were like, we need to just do a D&C and remove and just make sure everything's cleaned out because of your past. And so I kind of did it all 3 ways. And then, yeah, with Blakely, after we found out she had passed, it was very like everything was how it would be if you were giving birth to a live child. I think that's sometimes what people don't understand is everything is still the same. You still have to give birth. You still bleed. Your milk still comes in. Like all those things, you still have to deliver the placenta. Like you still have to cut the cord. Like it's exactly the same. It's just your baby isn't alive. And I was surprised because I had people say things to me like, "Oh, you delivered her," and I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, she was full term. Like, you know."
Yeah,
So I
she
was
had to come
pretty
out
shocked
somehow.
I was pretty shocked that people like didn't, and they, some people were like, well, couldn't you just have done a C-section and make it easier? And I'm like, a C-section is a major surgery. And so I don't know in all cases, but my doctor was like, unless you really need one, we don't want to go that route because that's a major surgery. And I just, I felt like, okay, I can do this. I can do the labor process. And, even though it didn't look how we had planned, she was still our daughter and it was still the day she was born. And we tried to be present and carry, we learned grief and joy can coexist. And that was a beautiful lesson that she taught us, is that one doesn't cancel out the other. Both can be present at the same time. And they were that day.
Yeah, because you got to meet her and see her, and that is joyful. And the other part was that she wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I learned those things. It's hard to allow yourself to feel both sometimes as well, because then you're like, oh, am I allowed to feel joy at the same time as being really, really devastated and so upset and so broken? So you had your daughter, one of the twins, before Blakely. So
Yeah.
I mean, did you feel prepared at all for labor, or were you kind of?
No. And I had friends that had babies. I had sisters who had babies. I didn't feel prepared. I was one of those women. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't like, this is, XYZ. I was kind of like, just see how it goes. I was induced with my daughter because her heart rate was it was decelerating and not coming back up. And so they were worried. And that was my first pregnancy. I just didn't know enough back then to know this isn't good.
Yeah.
When she was born, they used the vacuum. I had to get an episiotomy. I had a level 3 tear. Like there was a lot because they needed to get her out. And turns out for her, the cord was wrapped around her neck a couple times. And so had I gone much longer with her, she probably wouldn't have been with us either. And so that's where I just feel like it's so crazy to me that all of my pregnancies are marked with a little bit of just stress, trauma. But I just didn't know anything. And so when she was born, they got her out quick enough that I didn't have to do a C-section, but it pretty much destroyed my body. And luckily I had a great team of doctors and I bled a lot, like I almost needed a transfusion. I passed out several times. So no, I don't think anything could have prepared me. And they say you forget. I don't know.
No, I think you forget some things, but I think the trauma, no. Like when there's trauma there, and I mean, to be honest, giving birth is traumatic. Like even if it goes fairly well, with all my babies, I've had like prolonged like early labor. So I'll like have contractions for like 5 hours a day for like a few weeks or a month or so. Just because my body's like, oh, we need to start opening now because we're not going to be ready otherwise. So
Yeah.
that's probably why you probably got the tear as well, because like there is moments where your body actually slowly sort of opens up and sort of your hips, even like my hips, like it's crazy.
It's the weird, it is so bizarre, but
Just
it's
opens up.
crazy what our bodies do. Yeah.
Just
Totally.
like, okay, now I have big hips. Great.
Great.
Never had big hips, and now I have massive ones, and they haven't set back. They never go back to their original anything. But yeah, I get what you mean. Like your body just, it takes a thrashing. It does when you go through having children. For me, I don't know if it's the same for you, but when I have a living child out of it, I'm like, I can accept that. I can accept the thrashing. I can accept the pain and everything. But when it ends in loss, I'm like, this is crap. Like, what is this? This is bull crap. I should not have to deal with any of this stuff on top of, you know. So how did you go dealing with that? Because you said your milk came in, and a lot of women have to go through that. So what processes did you go through? How did you mentally get through it?
Yeah, I can remember one of the first times it hit me was, I was in the hospital, and it was shortly after Blakely was born, and they made me get up to go to the bathroom. And you know what this is like. You get up and you just start gushing blood. And that's terrible when you have the living child. And when your baby dies, the blood is like a terrible reminder. And like I can remember this nurse helping me, and I felt it like leaving my body, and I just start sobbing, and I was like, this isn't fair. And that sweet nurse, she just helped me, and I just cried. And that was the first moment I was like, my body's still going to go through all the same things I did with my first, and my baby's not here. And I'll never forget like waking up and having my milk come in and being like, so like it hurts so bad, and being like, I don't have a baby to feed. And I remember I woke up early, and I went downstairs on the couch, and I was like putting ice packs or heat, whatever they say, to like help. And my husband came down, and he was like, I didn't even think about that piece. And it sucks. And I have heard of some amazing moms who donate their milk after loss.
Me too. I know.
And I tell you, they have a special place in heaven, because that's amazing. That was not me.
No.
I was like, milk was for my baby, and I wanted it to dry up as fast as possible. But man, it was hard to go through that, and to bleed for so many weeks, and to look at my stomach, and yeah, it just didn't feel fair. And I remember like trying to constantly remind myself like she was worth it. There were a lot of times I was just mad at my body. I felt like it had failed me. I think no matter what, I felt like I blamed myself. I was like, I did something. I moved that heavy rug, and that's what did it. Or I didn't pray enough, or I didn't eat well enough, or I don't know. Like, I think as moms, we blame ourselves because that's our job, right? And so when they die, especially within our body, like you feel like a failure. And I had to come to grips with, or at least this is what made me feel better, is I'm not that powerful to give and take life. That's not, I believe in a higher power, and I don't have that capability. And I did everything I could to keep my daughter healthy. And this was her story. And I believe that she was still a miracle. She was still an answer to prayer. It just didn't look the way that I had expected it to. But I had to really make peace with my body. And I did that through doing yoga. I actually did that through doing things like doing a boudoir shoot with, and like seeing my body and seeing it was beautiful and not broken, and yeah, doing new things, like pushing myself, seeing that my body did everything it needed to do and it was not my fault, and take that guilt off of myself, because nobody should carry that weight. It's not yeah, it has nothing to do with us.
It really is easy to blame ourselves. Like I definitely did. And my husband just continually told me, you have no idea what happened and you're never going to know, and you're just going to have to accept it. And you can't tell me that you know what happened, because you don't. And I hated him saying that, but I was like, it's true. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not going to change anything. Like,
no,
it's just not. It's not going to change anything. And we want so badly. And I remember with all the autopsy stuff, like wanting to get lawyers involved and like just wanting to make them pay for, and I'm like, it doesn't bring her back. Didn't bring her back. Like, and at the end of the day, like, I had to wake up in that reality. She's not here. So what am I going to do with that? What will I do with that piece? How am I going to move forward today? And some days that was staying in bed and not getting out of bed. And other days it was reaching out for help and saying, I'm not okay. And some days it was being okay and sharing her story and not crying and being like, okay, I want to help others, So every day looks different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, something that crosses my mind is like, maybe it's better that you didn't get those answers, because you don't know what those answers were. And maybe God was like, no, like that's not good for you to hear, or something,
And I think it was a gift because, for us, and who knows, our doctor was like, had you gotten an answer that it was the cord or whatever, they would say that's like 1 in 1,000 chance or whatever. And they wouldn't have monitored us as close. And so, I liked being monitored closely, and because we didn't have answers, they were more on high alert and I think more attentive. Yeah, I don't know. But it is hard to be like, she was completely healthy, so what happened? And instead of the autopsy, we ended up doing something called a microarray, which is even, I'm not medical, but apparently like it's like a deeper look into the chromosomes and stuff. And she was healthy. Like there were no signs of anything. And so, that we will never know. But I can't let that hold me back.
But it's good that they were monitoring you and keeping an eye on you, and they were expecting you to like go in there and get checked out, because like you said, like your son, you were lucky to have that feeling and then go in there and then have him like come out so early, so that he was alive and breathing. And
I learned you have to advocate for yourself. And with my daughter, it's so hard. I felt like the boy who cried wolf. Like I was always, we all know if you've been pregnant, it's scary no matter what. And you have these intuitions and you're like, am I just crazy? And I'm like, who cares? Like, so what if you're crazy? Better to go in and like, you are the only one who will advocate for your child. And with Blakely, she had failed a couple stress tests. She, there were some things going on, and I always wonder, like, should I have pushed more? Should I have like really questioned my doctor more? Again, I can't live in that past because that's not going to do any good. But with my next pregnancy, I learned, okay, if I have a feeling or anything, I don't care if they think I'm crazy. I will ask to have an ultrasound, to have an extra stress, whatever it may be. Like, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. And even if it's just putting yourself at ease, it's way better for your baby that you aren't stressed out than having to just be like, oh, I'm just going to suck it up and try to talk myself out of it. Like, no, just, they're making money off of you no matter what. So go in and like,
yeah, a lot,
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Yeah.
And it's easy to, you know, fall into that mindset of, well, they have a degree, so they know what they're doing, you know. But you know your body and you know how you feel, and clearly your intuition was on point. So
yeah,
I'm so glad that you went in there.
Yeah.
So with that last pregnancy, I know you said you're done now. That was your last baby. I totally understand. What was that like the pregnancy? Did you already know that was going to be your last pregnancy? Had you already sort of discussed it with your husband and were like, you know, this is it, we're done?
Yeah, my husband almost got a vasectomy when I was pregnant with Blakely, and we didn't because we just kind of forgot, didn't schedule it, which thank goodness. But when I was pregnant with my son, I told him once we got to 30 weeks, I was like, if anything happens with this baby, we're not doing this again. And so we knew that he would be our last, but especially when we got into our third trimester, we were like, at this point, or really to the point of, you know, viability, we're like, at this point, if we lose another one this late in the game, we're done. And so he got a vasectomy when I was I was like 32 weeks pregnant. And I ended up having my son at 35 weeks. But we just knew, I was like, I can't go through this anymore. And so if this happens again, I fully know I can do it. We've been through it. We got through it. We'll be okay. It's going to suck, but I cannot continue to, you know, have my body go through this, because for whatever reason, I just am not one of those women that get pregnant easily or have babies just come out healthy. And so it just didn't feel fair to me. It did not feel fair to them. So we just knew like this would be our last. And that felt scary because we had to hold it loosely and be like, anything can happen. But I always tell women, you never regret celebrating. And so like, if I can encourage someone who's pregnant after loss, it's hard to like, you know, celebrate or to connect, because there is that possibility of loss. And for me, there was never a safe point. It was never like, you're past 12 weeks, you're safe. You're past 20 weeks, you're safe. There was never that line. And I could have chosen to not celebrate until he was in my arms breathing, but he deserved to be celebrated no matter how many days he was with us, whether that was 9 weeks or 39 weeks or 9 months old. Like, it's a life. And I don't regret celebrating my daughter. We had a baby shower for her, and I loved it because we celebrated her when it was just happy. We celebrate her all the time now. There's a level of sadness involved. That was pure happiness and joy and preparing for her arrival. And I don't regret that. I don't regret the maternity pictures. I don't regret any of that, because again, she is still my middle child. She's my second daughter, you know. So I am a huge advocate of like, they deserve to be celebrated. It's not going to make it any better. Like, do we, and I always tell people, I'm like, do you really think it's going to make it easier if you haven't connected versus if you have? Like, it's going to suck and it's going to be hell no matter what. And so you might as well connect and enjoy and celebrate and release that outcome, instead of say like, well, I will celebrate after I'm 12 weeks, or I'll celebrate when this baby's in my arms, or, you know, whatever. Cause it's really hard to shift that too. All of a sudden your baby's here and you're like, cool, I'm going to celebrate. And then you have a hard time connecting. Like, your brain it protects, right? So I think to give yourself the permission, I'm going to get attached, and it could be hard, and I could get hurt, but it's worth it.
Yeah. But I mean, like you said, it's going to hurt. If something bad does happen, it's going to hurt anyway. It's just one way you actually felt some joy and hope and beauty before that happened. And that's pretty much how I'm living at the moment, like day to day. Like, you know, it will be what it will be, and I'm just going to give into that hope as much as I can. And in those moments where I literally can't even see hope, I just kind of allow myself to feel that. And that's hard. But when I can see the hope, I'm like, yes, just grab it quick. It's definitely an experience, and it's an experience that you don't expect. You think like if you get pregnant and you just get past a certain point, you know, you'll be okay. But then when you're in this space, you hear so many stories, and then, you know, you just don't. And if you've had a baby to full term, that point is there. So it's going to be hard the entire time regardless anyway. Because your point is at the end. But yeah, I had early losses, and when I reached those points, I was thinking, yes, I'm gonna feel good now. I'm gonna feel so, you know, but no, I was like, every scan I had, I was apprehensive. I laid on that table and I was just like, I feel numb. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna see that baby. Like, this is ridiculous. I was supposed to feel good. You know, I'm past the point where I lost. Why am I still stressed?
Right. And then they're born and there's a whole new set of worries. And so my thing is, if you're always trying to protect yourself, you're going to miss out on some of those opportunities to enjoy and celebrate. And so there's always going to be something, there's always a risk, because that's what comes with love, right? And are you going to allow that to steal your joy, or are you going to lean into that and know, yeah, this isn't, I have no control. I had to learn that. I have no control, and that's really scary. But what I can control is how I choose to live each day and love on my kiddos that are here on this earth, and think about the ones who aren't. And, you know, they've each given me a beautiful gift of being a better person. So I choose to lean into that.
Yeah. No, I think you know, everyone I've talked to who chooses to lean into that, and like the good choice changes in them and everything, like there is more of a sense of contentment and just kind of peace. And there are a lot of women who they're still like in denial of who they've become, and like they're still very angry, you know, but yeah, if you're feeling that discontentment, there is a choice. You can make that choice. It's hard to make that choice, but you know, like you said, like when you focus on those things, you can change the narrative in your mind. What was it like having your son? So now that he's here, how has that been? You know, I've had some mixed reviews of having a baby after a loss, especially a stillborn loss, just in terms of the likeness and stuff. So how has that?
It was hard when I found out he was a boy. I wanted a girl. You would think I would just be happy with a healthy baby. But I think subconsciously I was trying to replace my daughter. And, you know, I had dreamed of having a daughter for Emmeline. And so she'd have a sister and I would be a girl mom. And I don't know, I wanted another girl. So when I found out I was having a boy, it was really hard. But I allowed myself to feel those feelings and be okay with that, and know there's no way around that. I can't, you know, pretend like it's not there. And so I felt those feelings. I cried. I was mad. And I mean, that sounds terrible. Like, I'm just being honest, but it was the best thing for me. And now I wouldn't have it any other way, but I had to get through those feelings and be honest with myself, to work through my grief, because I think I was trying to replace her. And I'm grateful that he was a boy, because I would have found out if I had had a girl, oh, it doesn't replace. Like, what I was trying to do wasn't going to work either way. And so it was incredibly hard. I was pregnant during the pandemic, which is not ideal. And that was the beginning when they were like, it is affecting pregnancy. It's not affecting pregnancy. So I was a mess. I had an amazing team of doctors that understood me, who saw my fears, who never made me feel crazy. At one point, my doctor was like, I think it's time to think about going on some anti-anxiety meds. And I was so against it, because I didn't even go on those after my daughter died. And it was kind of like a pride thing for me. And she was like, Heather, your baby is the most important and you are losing your mind. And I was, you know, I was 30 weeks at that point. I was getting closer and closer. And that was, for me, one of the best decisions I made. That was for my baby. It was for me. And it really helped postpartum as well. I know that's not the answer for everyone, but I needed help beyond, like, it wasn't something I could control. And I was grateful for a doctor who said, it's time. And it was really hard, but I just did it. I didn't have a choice. And I had to sit down with my husband. I had the conversation of, what if this baby dies? And we had that conversation. Okay, here's what we would do. Here's who we would call. And it was almost, I mean, it's very weird for people to hear that, but it was empowering because I was like, okay, we've been through this and I sure as hell don't want to go through it again. But if we do, we're gonna be okay. And I think once we sat in that and we're able to talk about, it's kind of like when you talk about what you're anxious about, it loses its power over you. I was able to like say, okay, like we don't want that, but we have a plan and it doesn't feel as scary and it doesn't feel as unknown. And I literally took it day by day, minute by minute. And again, I would call my doctor. I had those friends in place that I could be like, I am feeling so scared. I need help. Like, can you pray for me? Can you sit with me? Can you listen to me? You just need to find those people who can truly just be supportive because it is really hard, but you've already been through one of the hardest things life can throw at you. And so I'm like, I can do anything at this point, So yeah.
Yeah. With Blakely, did you have a room like ready for her and all that? And how did you go with sort of sorting that out for your son? Because I'm presuming he
Yeah.
needs the same room or
So we did have her room ready. It was almost ready, but not complete. And I remember in the hospital thinking, someone go to my house and take all the baby stuff out. And then I was kind of like, I don't know if I want that. And so what I had my family do is go in, take out the bassinet by my bed, take out, the little swing thing, like take out the things that were like in our main living area, and just put them in our basement out of sight. And I didn't want to change her room. And I kept the door closed for the longest time. And I had to walk by it every day because my other daughter's room was down there and stuff. And the door would be closed. And then eventually the door was cracked. And then eventually I would go in there. We ended up I couldn't stand the thought of an empty crib. So we took the crib out, but we did put a beautiful day bed in there and kept the rocker, kept everything else in there. And we made it like a place where we could go and feel connected to her and write her letters. And it was very peaceful. And so eventually I got to a place of I would just sit in there and I'd cry in there, I'd pray in there, I'd laugh in there, I would do a lot of things in there. And then when I found out I was pregnant with my son, I couldn't bear the thought of replacing. And I think that's why I wanted a girl too, is because it felt like, okay, well, I could still use the room. And I was like, there's no way, it's pink and it's flowers and like just didn't fit. And we ended up using a different room and not having to use that room. But some of the families that I've gotten to know well that have, either same sex or different sex, they use the same room, but maybe they just change it a little bit. And yeah, that was hard for us. And we moved this year out of that house, and her space is like right behind me here. It's like one of my favorite. This is like a bookshelf room. It has lots of natural light. And I come in here every morning and it has all of her items, her pictures, her ashes, like her keepsakes. And we just have a special place for her. And for us, that's healing. Some people want to put it out of sight, out of mind. For us, it was like, she's very much part of our family. We're going to talk about her. We're going to have a space for her. And moving out of our house was hard because we were leaving her room, but we also felt like it was time, and we just created a new space for her.
Yeah, it's I've heard of a few ladies where they had to use the same room because they just didn't have rooms.
Yeah.
And yeah, she said it was really hard to pack up that room. But I think I mean, it's lovely that you were using her room as that kind of like sanctuary almost, like where you just went there and were there. So if anyone's in that season right now, if you have another room, then, maybe that one can be the new baby's room, and you can keep that room as your spot for now. You don't have to. You don't have to pack it down if it's not a have to. If you want to keep it.
Yeah.
So.
I always say, like, don't make any rash decisions. Like, give it time. I could have never imagined myself going in her room and sitting in there when she first passed. And then after some time went by, like, it just became one of my favorite places to be. So you just don't know. So don't make any crazy decisions right off the bat. Like, just give yourself time.
Yeah, definitely. I actually share a room with my kids, so I do the whole like listening out for their breathing and all this stuff, all the things that you worry about, and even more so after loss, and you're just like extra vigilant and extra on edge.
Yeah, my kids get the sniffles, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? It's hard.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah, the fear and the anxiety, I think, for a lot of women, it's probably one of the hardest things, because you change, and then you become this sort of really fearful person sometimes, and it's hard to deal.
It's so hard. And some days are easier than others, but what I've learned with anxiety is it steals so much from you. And it's hard for us who are those 1% that, like, the rug's been ripped out from underneath of us, and we have experienced the worst. And so that's where your mind goes. But I have to remind myself, like, okay, I can choose to focus on this and be scared of something I have absolutely no control over, or I can let go and do the best I can as a mom to protect my kids, get them help when they're sick, but I don't want to miss out on who they are now. And just making myself crazy with all the bad things that could happen to them, and miss out on they're here and they're healthy, and we're going to enjoy every single day that I have with them.
Yeah. My husband, he's always the voice of reason. He says to me, he's like, you don't know what's going to happen. And, if that thing does happen, then we'll deal with it. Like, we'll deal with it together. But right now, this is what's happening. Like, right now, nothing bad has happened. So that's where we need to be. And I was just, every time I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And had someone told me, like, you're going to have 4 babies in heaven, I would have been like, what? I could never. How am I going to do that? You just do it, and you just get through it. And there are other parts of my story that are incredibly traumatic that had someone told me, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to survive this, but you just do. And for me, that's where my faith has played a huge part of, like, getting me through. But you can't live in the what ifs and the unknowns, because that's what I love to, like, help women see that have gone through loss or infertility, is like, you're so much stronger than you realize. And if you can get through this, you can do anything.
Yeah. I always remind people as well, like, you don't have to rely on your own strength either. Like, if you really feel like you haven't got strength, there are some prayers that don't get answered in the way we want them to, but strength always gets answered. We always get strength when we ask for it. So that's definitely something. Just to wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to say about the non-for-profit that you work for, or that I don't know if is it your profit, or is it one that you work for?
So I work with one that came alongside of us. They're called Walk With Me. They're Colorado based in Denver. Work with several hospitals. They're amazing. They came in, visited us in the hospital, did the most amazing keepsakes, paid for her cremation, her funeral. They offer counseling for couples. Just such an amazing organization. They have continued to walk alongside of us, and we wouldn't be where we are today if it was not for them. They're just truly amazing. They're working on some incredible projects that are going to help hospital staff, and they're awesome. And I'd love to see their dream is to expand nationwide, because it's so needed. So I love getting to work with them. My husband did start a nonprofit for grieving men called Journey Authentically. And that's where he just helps, he kind of saw this need for dads to have the space to grieve, because they're so overlooked. and it's their baby too. They're grieving too. They're trying to be strong for us. They're grieving. It's a lot. And so he just saw the need to get men to be able to deal with their grief. And in turn, that's going to help marriages and families and their partners and their kids. Like, it's just going to make everyone healthier. So that's called Journey Authentically. And he just has such a heart to help, them just deal. And they don't sit around like us moms and talk and cry. Like, they do manly things and kind of organically let their grief come up. And he's a licensed counselor. So he has the life experience and the head knowledge. We're working on an online course for couples who go through loss that we're going to be hopefully launching in September. So we're really excited about that because, marriage relationships are hard enough. And then you add in loss, infertility. And I think I remember reading a statistic that was like 90% of couples who lose a child get divorced. And I was like, it's just not fair. And we had a great marriage before. And then we lost our child and we struggled. And so we have a passion to help couples really find it as like their power. Like, if we can get through this, we can get through anything. And instead of letting it tear you apart, let it bring you together. So we're excited for that. And yeah, there's just some exciting things that we're hoping to do within the community. We do a Mother's Day walk every year for families of loss. And it's a community obviously near and dear to our heart that we want to continue to walk with, and carry on our daughter's legacy. So we feel like that is our way of keeping her memory alive.
Definitely. That's so wonderful. Please send me the link when you do release the course, because I'll put it below the video. And I'm sure people will still be watching here and there throughout the year anyway. So I'll put the link down so women can see that, and I'll send out a little shout out as well, email everyone. But that's wonderful that you're creating that, and it really is necessary. Like, I've spoken to so many women who really did go through a tough time with their husbands, and and it really is just a case of we experience loss differently, and it's hard to it's hard to be married anyway. Sometimes you're two different people and you have different ideas, and you grow together, or sometimes you go apart, and with loss in the mix, it's just 100 times harder. So it's really lovely that you guys are doing that. And if your husband wants to come on here, let him know. I'm actually trying to get male speakers. I've got like, I think three, and one of them's my husband. So he didn't.
I'm signing him up for you.
Yeah, he was like, and I'm like, no, you have to be on the event. I'm like, I'm organizing it. You have to do it. Like,
he'll do it. I'm gonna go ahead and just say he'll do it.
Right. But yeah, so I'll link everything that you guys are doing, and if he does come on, then we'll link his stuff on his as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for all you're doing. It's so needed and amazing, and it's healing for me to just sit here and talk about it. So I just appreciate you and what you're doing. It's amazing. So keep doing it. I'm sorry. I always, I hate the way that we know each other, but I love that we know each other,
Yeah.
So we need more people like you willing to just kind of do stuff like this and get people together and show them that they're not alone. We're in it together. And yeah.
Thank you. No, I totally get it. Like, every woman I speak to, it's like a therapy session. Like, we're both like, we might cry, or I might cry after, or like, and it's so it is healing. Like, it's really beautifully healing. It's devastating, and and you have nothing but love. Like, I love you. And I'm gonna pray for you just like I pray for all the other women I've spoken to, and it's just it's amazing, like the love and the heart and the compassion. I do. That's the one thing I really love, having gone through this, that love. It's not something you feel unless you've gone through this.
Right, totally. And it's weird to feel grateful for it, but there are times when I'm like, I feel so grateful that I've experienced this depth of pain, because it's made me just see what love can do, you know, and how bad it can hurt, but how bad it's worth it too. So
Yeah, and I think the one thing that makes it slightly easier, an easier pill to swallow, is just that, you know, our child was part of that. Like, even though they're not here with us, they're a big reason for that change and that love and that compassion and that understanding and that beauty, you know, even though there was, you know, horribleness, like ugliness in there, there's that beauty too, and they're part of that. They made that beauty, you know. So yeah.
Totally. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit blubbery at the moment. I'm
I
like,
love it.
I'm
Ears
like
are welcome.
25 weeks and I'm just like crying at the drop of a hat now.
I get it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for speaking with me, and thank you for your time. And
Yeah, I feel
lovely
so
day.
honored. Yes. Well, you enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.